Welcome back to Podcasting for Latina CEOs. I am your host and your coach, Heidi de la Cruz. And today I actually have a quick episode. I want to give you some tips on saving time editing your podcast episodes. Because one of the things that I underestimated when I first started my podcasting journey was how long it was actually going to take me to edit episodes. But I did realize that the longer or the more that I did it, the faster I got. But in the very beginning, it is time consuming. Okay, so I want to give you some tips on saving time editing your podcast episode. And I've heard podcasters say that they don't want to edit episodes because they want to be real and authentic and everything. And I'm like, I get that, but there are certain things that we should edit out so there's a nice flow. And also, we want to provide our listeners a good listening experience, especially if we're going to do audio only podcasts, because people will tolerate bad video, but they will not tolerate bad audio. So if your audio is not good, it's just not going to be a good listening experience. So I highly recommend to edit your podcast episodes, which is why I'm providing you some tips to make it as fast and as simple and easy as possible. Okay. It just takes time to get into the getting used to editing. If you can outsource editing, go ahead and do it. I actually do offer editing services. I actually do have a client current. Well, I don't know if it's one client or two clients because they're doing a podcast together, but I do have a podcasting editing client right now that I am helping edit their episodes. So if you are able to outsource, I do have that service available for you. But if you want to do it yourself in the beginning, let's dive in and let me give you these tips. Okay. So first, the first thing that I realized that helped me get faster with editing was having a custom intro and a custom outro for each episode. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I do have a specific intro, right, with the music and everything that plays with before each episode. And then at the end, it's my kids, right? Thank you for listening to. And then my son says, "Mommy podcast," right? So I have those templates already set to go that I plug in the beginning of each episode and at the end of each episode. And I just have to edit the episode itself. So I don't have to create an intro each time or an outro each time. It's already custom, it's already done, and I just plug it in and when I edit. Now, if you want to, change your intro or your outro at any given time, obviously you can go ahead and do that and then just use those templates moving forward, right? If you have a MacBook, you can create a template on GarageBand, and then you can also use GarageBand to edit your audio only podcast episodes because GarageBand already comes with your MacBook, so you don't have to purchase another software to edit. You can just edit it on there. One of the things that I used to do that helped me a lot while editing was also to write my show notes. And so while I'm editing, I'm taking down notes of, like, highlight things that I want to put in the show notes or the summary that I want to put into the show notes. So you can definitely write your show notes while you're editing as well. So then you kind of kill two birds with one stone. Now, I will say I have been using ChatGPT and Whisper Transcribe. Again, I have an affiliate link for Whisper Transcribes that write the show notes for me. I don't copy and paste. I obviously, I use it as a template and then I will put it into my own words. But also ChatGPT, like, you can upload the transcription of your podcast episode and then you can tell it, like, hey, can you create show notes for me and then highlight, three or four key things from the episode. So you can definitely do that as well. But when I first started, I was obviously doing everything, myself, not using AI as much as I am doing now. So while I was editing my podcast episodes, I will then go ahead and write my show notes. And I try to keep the same format for my show notes. So I actually have a template for each episode, right? For each podcast, since I have two, I have a template of how I want the show notes to be written. And then I just plug and play what I need for that particular episode, right? So you can also create a template for your show notes and then just plug and play what information you want on there. I do have the show notes outline in the podcast starter kit in my Stan store if you are interested in that as well. So that also helps with time management when it comes to, like, editing your episodes and writing your show notes as well. Time management, oh my goodness. So like I said, the worst thing that I did in the beginning of my podcasting journey was underestimate how long it would actually take me to edit episodes. So again, my first podcast interview based, so it's me and a guest talking and trying to keep episodes to 30 minutes or less. Sometimes, we go more into like 45 minutes or sometimes even an hour. And editing those episodes, I realized I was like, I needed double the time to edit, right? So if I recorded for 30 minutes, it was going to take me about an hour to edit. Or like, if it was an hour, it was going to take me like almost 2 hours to edit those episodes because you do have to listen through it. You do have to listen to it through, right? And then remove any long pauses or if the guest messed up, or things like that, like remove those filler words, right? That we all use, and just making sure that everything flows and sounds natural. But again, the more that I did editing, the more I realized, okay, this is the area where I need to edit, and it became faster. So for my immigration podcast, now I have a VA who edits for me, but I do still do the editing for this podcast and for my clients. And one thing that I do with my VA to help her with her editing that you can utilize yourself is write notes on where you messed up and say like, hey, I messed up on this thing and I said this, take this out. Or you can make notes for yourself. Or even if you are doing like a solo episode like I am right now, I could be like, okay, I want to re-say that again, let me remove, okay, let me take a pause, and then I start and talk, right? So it's kind of like talking to yourself. I was like, okay, I don't want that part. Let me restart. Let me pause. You take a pause, and then you start from where you messed up and say what you actually wanted to say. So those are different tips that you can use to edit, to save time editing your podcast episode. Because honestly, like editing is what takes the majority of the time when it comes to podcasting, and it's the part of the podcast cycle that people to dread the most. So they tend to outsource that part as fast as they can, as best as they can. So again, if you do want to outsource the editing part, I do have space available to take on a few editing clients. So just let me know. You can send me an email and then we can, work out through the packages and the pricing and all of that. But all right, those are the tips that I have for you to help you save time editing. So have the template of your intro and your outro just ready to go. So then all you have to do is just edit your podcast episode and then write your show notes while you are editing or use a template for your show notes. And then time management, just make sure that you set enough time apart to edit your podcast episode. Again, if your episode is about 15 minutes, it's going to take you at least 30 minutes to edit. Or if it's 30 minutes, it's going to take you at least an hour. And this is just in the beginning, you guys. Once you get going and you already know and you have a flow, it's going to get faster. But I'm talking to in the very, very beginning of podcasting when you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. This is what I'm talking about. But thank you again so much for being here for another episode. Thank you so much for trusting me. And I can't wait to hear more about the podcast that you guys are launching. So thank you again so much. Until next episode, con mucho amor, Coach Heidi.